I think the other reason why I use the PC a lot is because it gives me the option of working intermittently, which is a really good thing for my ADHD brain. If I'm having a really hard time focusing and I need a break, I can not change environment, but I can change task for a little while, play a video game for 15 minutes that's relaxing and, you know, help with my restlessness or whatever it is that's kind of can help realign my brain a little bit. And then I can go back to that other task and I don't have to like do a big takedown setup, you know, putting away and taking out and all that. Which can cause and trigger a whole cascade of other things of distraction for the whole ADHD adventures that can lead to me not coming back to the task that I was supposed to be taking a break from. So it makes it more likely that the break that I am taking will lead to just a break and I'll come back to the task that I was trying to take a break from, if that makes any sense. So I think that's another thing that I like about it, because I'll be like writing a blog entry or whatever and I'll be like really stuck and not sure and I just need to like do something 10-15 minutes. So I'll open up some Balloon Tower Defense 6 and pop some balloons for a little bit and then let it just kind of mull in there and then I can go back to it. So I like that. And I like that if I'm really stuck in a game and I can't figure out what I'm doing and I'm getting really frustrated, I'm right where I can like quickly do a Google search. And those are the things that I like about using a computer. And I also really like the way that the Steam platform is set up. I like that there are a bunch of games that are available for free that I can just try out and play. And so that if I'm at a point in my life that I don't have a lot of money for extras, that I can still get new video games and do, you know, try new stuff without spending any money so I can still have new entertainment. Or I can play some of the more leading titles, like you have the Final Fantasy titles on Steam. I think that's another reason that I like computer, is that I really like the way that the Steam platform is set up in offering some financial diversity in what's offered. Anything from like literally $0 to a couple dollars to your full on $60, $70 video games. It makes it more accessible for me even when I'm at my times that I don't have the money to spend on video games. But I mean, I guess that's just kind of how I answer questions. I never give like a simple, I do this thing and leave it at that. It's always like, yeah, I do this thing and this is why and this is what got me into it and this is when I first did it and I could even go into like what my second cousin's first cousin's mom's dad's brother prefers. You just never know. Yeah, that I totally info dump. I call it word vomit, but yeah, I've definitely encountered the info dumping. And yeah, like I get excited about a topic and it's just like, here, know all the things. So you guys just got like word vomited, info dumped. Yep, there you go. Me. Which is also a very ADHD or autistic thing. It happens all the time here. Get me on a topic I know a lot about. I do the same. Yeah, I think that's a really common human thing. And I think that unfortunately, society teaches us not to get excited about things in that way and to, I don't know, like hide our excitement. It's one of the ways that I mask. It's one of the ways that I frequently have masked, and I'm trying really hard to mask less. So I try to be less conscious about things like info dumping. But yeah, they want to mute it. They want to like silence it. They don't want to listen to all of that. And I think that's really unfortunate because I think that the most beautiful thing in life, or one of the most beautiful things in life, is someone being excited and passionate about something. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're excited and passionate about it, I want to hear you talk about it. There's nothing more amazing than seeing somebody light up that way. Like, I have a friend that is really into makeup and she sells it and she does makeup tutorials and she is a makeup guru and she loves makeup. And her and I used to work together and that's how I met her. And I myself am not really a big makeup person. I don't even tend to wear makeup. And if I do, it's for like a costume or Halloween stuff. But she's like everyday religiously makeup. But I love listening to her talk about makeup and explain the differences of foundation and why you would use one foundation over another. And I love listening to her talk about differences of blush and the differences of eyeliner. I'm never going to use these products. I don't need this information. But I love the passion and I love the excitement and I love seeing how she lights up, and the way that it makes her glow is the only way that I can explain it. The beautifulness that they take on when they talk about something that they're super excited and passionate and interested and in love with is one of the most amazing things to see. And I wish that we would allow people to celebrate more in those things, because I would really rather everybody go around talking about the things that make them excited rather than talking about how other people have disappointed them, or how other people don't meet their expectations, or how other people behave in ways they don't approve of. I would much rather listen to somebody's excitements of the things that I'm not interested in. I would much rather that be our conversation. I used to steal my sister's makeup and put on looking like a clown, looked ugly as fuck, but learned what is what, right? I think that there's definitely a huge learning curve with makeup, and I, for a long time, felt a lot of pressure to be female enough that, so I had to wear makeup because that was what women did, and that's what females did. And in order to be female enough, I had to be part of that. So I definitely struggled with the whole wearing makeup, and for a long time I owned a whole big drawer of makeup. So and went through this phase of trying to make myself put it on every day. I don't even like the way makeup feels on my face. I don't like the way it feels being applied. I don't like the sensory experience of it. I don't like the smell of it. I just generally don't like makeup. And I have since decided that it's not for me, and that I don't need that in my life to be a complete whole human being, and that I don't need to measure up to someone else's idea of what is feminine enough and how much of me needs to be feminine. And that was a big hurdle in my life, deciding that I don't need to be enough for other people. I can just be me, and either that's going to be good enough for them or it's not. But I think it's super amazing when people get excited about stuff, and I love finding out and discovering what people's projects are, what their hobbies are, what their passions are, what it is that lights up that spark, because man, I want them to info dump, and they always then, I'm sorry, I'm oversharing. No, please keep talking. I love it. I love it so much. Tell me all about the thing. If you're excited about miniature trains and train models, tell me all about your train models. If you are excited about collecting Beanie Babies, tell me about the Beanie Babies. If you're excited about the Witcher series and that's your fandom and that makes you just yes, then I want to hear all about it from your perspective. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. I just don't, there's just nothing cooler than listening to people talk about things that they find interesting and fascinating and exciting. And I wish that we celebrated more the things that brought people joy, and we celebrated more the way that people light up like that. I want to see everyone light up like that. I want everybody to have a project in their life, a passion, a hobby that brings out that excitement and glow in them, that there's something in life that brings them that joy. I think everybody deserves that, whether it is cooking or collecting a thing or whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. As long as they're not hurting anybody, let's just celebrate. Let's just celebrate it. That joy that comes from the simplicity of loving a thing. Definitely don't think there's enough of that. Geralt in English dub is so bad if you compare it to the Polish one. Oh yeah? And is this in reference to the show or to one of the games or to the narration of one of the books? I'm not super familiar with Witcher. I have watched the first season of the Netflix show. I have not played any of the games. And I've read the first 3 novels, so I'm not super in depth. But you prefer the Polish? Do you speak Polish, or do you just prefer to hear the Polish and then read it? Oh, they're similar languages? I did not know that. So do they have like a similar, I can't say language root, like French and English are both romantic languages. Are they similar like that, you mean? Because I am definitely not a language expert. And since the Witcher universe is heavily influenced by Slavic cultures, it fits more. Yeah, I definitely had to look up a lot of the creatures and references that they were making because I had never heard of them. And I thought it was super fun when I watched the show to like, oh, what's that? Like, and at first I thought they were just like totally making up a new monster, and that's okay too. But I thought it was more interesting when I found out that they were pulling from mythology and some lore, and was able to like look that up and kind of delve into it. And then I got onto that, like this whole adventure. So that was kind of cool and fun. I really did enjoy the first season, and I really enjoyed the first couple books. I do plan to consume more of the Witcher world, because that English dub is just like Batman doing drugs and hunting monsters. So would you say that you are part of the Witcher fandom? And if so, are you exclusively a fan of the games, or do you like follow all of the Witcher things? I really enjoyed the interaction between Witcher and the Bard. And his name is different in the show and the book, and how it was translated, and books, games, series was something bad. Yeah, I've seen it translated as Marigold. I've seen it translated as Dandelion. So I just usually just make reference to the Bard. It seems to be pretty consistently a yellow flower of some variety. So you are not a fan of the Witcher series. I found it funny how Marigold is something like spinach. From a botanical sense, you mean? I'm assuming you don't mean that the character was like spinach. I find it interesting that it's translated to various different edible medicinal yellow flowers. Popeye all of a sudden? I guess I don't know what you mean by that. He is spinach. Like Popeye eats spinach and then he gets all like from his spinach. Are you trying to say that the Witcher is buff because he eats? Because wow, that takes on some connotation. I'm so confused. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the Popeye spinach. I was thinking, what would Marigold look like if he would be spinach? Oh, like if they changed the plant type. Gotcha. From a more ornamental flower to a more vegetable labeled plant. I do think that it's interesting. Marigold in Polish is spinach. That's interesting. As in they're the same word and they're the same. They use the same word for both plants. I do think that it's interesting how they name characters, and they will in stories frequently will name characters and then try to give them the persona of the thing that they are named for. So like if you give them a name like Marigold or Dandelion or Violet, you will try to give them characteristics that are representative of the flower, be it the colors being presented in the person's physical person, or the medicinal properties being represented in their character, or what have you. I think it's an interesting trope that is frequently used, and sometimes it's done well and sometimes it's not so much. What is a Pikachu Shiba? Is that one of his evolutions, or is that a mashup that somebody created? I mean, Marigold is either a calendula of that plant family or spinach. Shiba is a type of dog. Oh, okay, so it's a mashup. So it's a mashup of a little, I'm assuming a little dog and a Pikachu. All right. I'm like, it doesn't look like the right colors and it's not quite the right shape, but it's definitely got some Pikachu vibe going on. Pikachu Shiba. All right. Mashups are always interesting. You never know what people are gonna like stick together, which can be super fun. And there are quite a few artists that's their whole thing. They just do like mashables. Shiba Inu are the Japanese dog. Oh, okay. And you're from Asia. I love that people from all over the world come and visit us at our stream. I really enjoy that diversity. It gives us an opportunity to like hear about perspectives from other places and learn things about other places, even if it is just what kind of dogs they have. Unfortunately, a frequent theme that I hear from people from other parts of the world is, dude, what is America doing? You guys are in chaos. And then I just kind of nod my head and say, yeah, we think so too. Back to The Witcher. Imagine that you have the whole universe of monsters and you can make the series interesting, and then you just do a generic monster there because you are doing dumbass prequel and do not respect a thing about it. So you did not feel that the show was respectful to the book, I'm going to say. Were you a fan of the book? I always find it interesting, like, where people's fandoms lie and, like, what parts of the franchise they appreciate and which parts of the franchise they're like, not so much. Witcher Blood Origin wasn't certainly trying to be lore friendly because there was no book as a base of that era. Yeah, I haven't really gotten much, like I said, I haven't really gotten much into the novel series yet, so I don't have a whole lot to compare to. It wasn't respectful to books nor games, and even the actor of Geralt apologized to fans how bad it was. Oh, so you also felt like it didn't, like, really cross over there well, Smolfy. So they just wrote a shit script and slammed Witcher there. So you felt like they were focused more on the franchising of it and the mass producing of a series and the monetization of it than the maintaining the universe and maintaining the story. It was supposed to be about Witcher origins, but all was generic nothingness. They were trying to add backstory and lore into the world that was not written, but was not very well done. Understatement. All right, that's fair. I mean, I personally feel that it's unfortunate that, at least in America, film is considered to be like the peak and epitome of all the things great, because I feel like very few books translate well into movies. I think that most of the time, if I really enjoy a book and it becomes a movie, it is a very rare thing that I enjoy the movie. I think The Green Mile translated into an amazing movie. I think that they did a very good job in staying incredibly true to what was in the novel and that it translated beautifully well into a film. I think that is a rare exception. I think that most of the time that what's being done in a novel does not translate well to visual media, because a lot of the time the things that happen in a novel are psychological level of exploration of like a psychology of a character, which is really hard to do on a visual screen. So that doesn't translate well. It's also the exploration of relationships of characters that again does not translate really well to a film, because like, how do you do that internal dialogue without it being the retarded voiceover? And then there's the issue of translation, that a lot of times when books are translated from one language to another, there's language hurdles. Very small amount of books written originally in Slavic languages are translated good. Yeah. I can't say I have a lot of experience reading Slavic books translated to English. I think that the Witcher series is the only example that I'm aware of. But I will say that I have tried reading a lot of like Japanese to English, Chinese to English, and I often come into areas of text, or sometimes entire texts, where I feel like the context and the meaning of it is completely lost in translation, where I just sit there and go, I don't know what's going on. I feel like that's what happened with the game Breeze. Like, I don't know what the original language was, but it was translated into English, and it's a story game, and because of the translation issues, I literally had no idea what was going on in this story. So I think that when you start doing the translation of one thing to another, one language to another for a book, and then you're trying to translate that book to a movie, and then there's too many translational levels to try to expect that movie to be anything to the original book is like, I think that that's an insurmountable hurdle. And I think it's also unfortunate, because I think that a lot of really good stories get really poorly represented in film. English fucking sucks in the fact that English is missing words. Yeah, I mean, and that's true in a lot of languages, I'm told. That translating from one language to another, there are words and word phrases and ideas that don't really exist in another language. I mean, I've been given many, many examples by many, many people who speak multiple languages. And it's something that's talked about frequently in the translation community about how there's phrases and terms and isn't represented in one language that is in another, which makes translating difficult. But then you add on to that cultural context, like slang and common phrases, turns of phrase that how do you translate the meaning of a slang term from one language to another when we don't use that slang terminology, but translate it in a way that we would understand what was intended in that phrase? You know, do you translate literally, so that word for word, or do you translate for meaning and intent? And how do you translate some of the cultural, you know, and that's where Lane, the anime, ran into so much trouble. And so many American viewers just sat there and went, what the hell did I just watch? Because there were so many cultural references and cultural things that it just assumed you knew and understood that I literally had to watch 13 hours of other explanation of what was going on in Lane for me to understand what I was seeing, to understand the cultural references that I was seeing in Lane, to be able to even understand what Lane was talking about, that it just made it really difficult to enjoy, you know, the experience. So yeah, translations are difficult. Translations face a lot of challenges. Samolfi was living for a year in Taiwan. We got one part of the bookshelf dedicated to Chinese literature. Okay. I don't think there's a good way to really get over that. I don't think, you know, that hurdle of like, how do we, because we definitely don't want those cultural differences to go away. We don't want the different languages to go away. I mean, humanity is, I think it's best in its diversity. I think it's most beautiful in its diversity. But it is that diversity, and it is that all the different languages and all those cultural contexts that make translation and the sharing of cultural experiences much more difficult. And I guess I just am kind of curious why the show writers felt that they needed to write backstory that wasn't, and lore that wasn't present in the books, and didn't just leave it as it was. Like, if something wasn't written in the novel, like, why did it need to be there? And I don't know. I think sometimes American film is too interested in answering questions and not interested enough in leaving things unsaid and unknown. You don't have to know what the bad guy looks like if it is some supernatural entity. You don't have to know where a supernatural phenomenon came from. So please stop putting black people in 15th century Middle Europe. They weren't really there. They weren't here. I mean, I think there's a lot of that going back both ways, Danton. There's a lot of people being portrayed as white when historically they should have been black. I think that there are a lot of people being portrayed. Yeah. How do you approach a film? Should you approach it by the person that can portray the character with the best quality of acting? Do you pick the actor that looks the most like the character is described in the story and would be most historically accurate as looking like they belong there, even though they don't act well? Like, I don't have a good answer to any of that, but I think that it is much more often in film that white people are placed where someone should have been another race. And I think that that's something very problematic in film. Yeah, when it comes to Chinese, I found out that people from other Slavic countries had easier time to understand a small difference in meaning of words, which was not that easily understandable in English or be properly translated. Well, that's interesting, Smolfy. I do think that different languages translate better or worse. Being an avid reader, I do feel like there are some languages that, having read their translations, I sit there and go, what the heck am I reading? And I feel like I need a lot of supportive text to explain what I'm reading, versus there are other things that translate really fluidly, and I don't need that. I find that when things are translated from French and Spanish, I tend to understand the text pretty well. I don't feel like I'm missing a lot of context. I feel like It's a much more fluid. I mean, I don't know. I don't speak both languages, but I feel like I'm getting a better, more complete whole story that is more functional than some other languages. Like, I feel like a lot of the translations I get from Chinese or Japanese don't have as functionally feeling translation to them. And I often wonder if it is because of the differences between the languages. All I have a problem is having black elves. I don't have problem with black actors. I have problems with people who were racist and were writing stories and all people there were white and were written white. Why do you have to put black people there? So Danton, the thing about inserting people of multiple races into film is about representation. And while I understand that the writer of the novel might not have had equal representation in the original story, there is value socially in having people visually represented equally in film. First of all, film has a greater impact on society than books, for one. Also, we should probably point out that people should do better about representing accurately in books. But I would argue that elves aren't real. They are a make-pretend race. So arguably, they could be purple. So it's really difficult to make an argument that a colored person or a white person or a Chinese person would better represent a make-pretend race. There's nothing in The Witcher that is real. It's all make-pretend. So it's really difficult to make an argument that that race doesn't represent a make-pretend race. Do you see my point? They've written a functioning universe, and now you have to make lore. Where are the black elves from? Where are the white elves from? It's make pretend. We don't know. I don't know. I have a hard time with that argument. I think the problem was he was hiding in a snowy area and he was black. So you don't feel that people of color know how to be stealthy? Because I think that our military has proven otherwise. There are plenty of people who have successfully completed stealth missions in areas of snow who are people of color. Just because you have dark skin does not mean that you cannot learn skills of stealth. But the problem is that the Witcher universe is inspired by Slavic world. It is not common to have black people here. That is written. I understand what your point is. I understand that you were saying it is based off of a primarily white society, and that the novelist, the writer, based all of their characters off of a culture that was dominantly white. I understand that. I understand that in Slavic culture, people are predominantly of a white skin. Super light brown skin, if we really want to get technical. But anyway, of the fairer nature. I understand that that's what it was based on in the novelist's imagination, and that the people in that area have a particular skin tone. However, there are a few points that are worth mentioning, and that is, this is a complete made-up world. It is not the actual Slavic world. It is based off of, just like displacer beasts are based off of cats, but they don't exist, so they can be purple and they can have tentacles, and that's okay, even though they're still based off of panthers. It's called reference material, and it really doesn't matter where the reference material was derived from. It isn't that reference material any longer. It has become this imaginary make-pretend world of the Witcher universe. And within that make-pretend Witcher universe, there is no rule set that dictates that these races can't be of different skin colors, be it green or purple or dark brown or blue, because they're make-pretend races. So you're arguing that you should respect the rule set, and you should respect what is written by a novelist above and before you respect the cultural needs of a people and the social needs of a people. I don't think that I can get behind that. It is not what I meant. It is more like he was supposed to be a snow elf. If he was somewhere else, people would not have a problem. Well, Smofy, that might be the case for you, but it sounds like Danton has a different issue. And I would also argue, is it necessarily true that snow elves are white? Is there a reason that a snow elf has to have white skin. Is like they're make pretend creatures. Who wrote the rule that a make pretend creature has fair skin just because they live in a snow biome? I mean, one can make the argument that many animals that live in snow biomes present with white furs and lighter skins, and they use that as a blending method. Yes, you're right. That particular novelist made that decision, but when he signed off the rights for someone else to take his work and make a creative adaptation of it, he gave them permission to reimagine his world. And when you give someone permission to reimagine your world, you are giving them permission to change the skin colors of your creatures, or to add unicorns when there wasn't, or to really change anything. And I think that it's really interesting that a lot of people get very upset about this particular issue, but rarely get upset when a book that was predominantly presented with Black characters gets represented on the screen with all white actors, which happens much, 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 much more often. Is it much more important to respect the original work and reflect just all white actors, or is it more important to be inclusive and allow representation so that all people can feel included in the visual representation in film? I would argue that it's more important to make people feel that diversity is included than it is to be respectful of that particular choice. What do we value in culture? What do we value in our community? What's important? What things do we want to uphold when we're creating things to project out into the world? I mean, it's make-believe. I don't understand anyone's argument in this one way or the other. It's fictional. If the author wrote something, that's how it is. There's no cultural argument to be had on either side, in my opinion. There aren't any oppressed fake beings that need to have their culture respected, nor do people in the real world's issues come into play in make-believe. Just enjoy the show, game, or don't. Simple as that to me. Well, slapping thigh, I would like to agree and disagree with half. So I agree that there's no cultural respect that needs to be given to the people in the story. There are no people in the story that are going to be hurt if we don't respect them as a character or whatever. And if we change anything, there's nobody who loses anything. But when we talk about representation in film and representation of culture in film, that is a different topic and absolutely affects the acceptance of diversity and the sense of feeling belonging and the sense of feeling like you are important in society in a way that impacts self-esteem. And film absolutely impacts that. If you are a person of a minority and you are watching TV and you never see yourself represented, then it is easy for you to walk away feeling like your minority is not important and has no value. Well, people are wanted, and if they are having a problem with that Black people are not in film, that is your favorite universe, then you really have a problem. Having read the book, I can't say that I personally imagined every single character as white and Slavic. That's the amazing part about reading a book, is that you get to imagine them in your mind however you want them to be. I didn't imagine every single character in that novel as a traditionally Slavic appearing individual. They were not all white in my head. They didn't imagine up that way for me. I would also say that I don't recall the author specifically stating character skin color, which left me room to imagine them as I chose. I also don't remember the author spending a lot of time telling me how tall or how short or what eye colors they have. So that leaves you as a reader a lot of room to project these characters in your theater's mind eye and create them into whatever kind of being that you want them to be. But when they become fictional characters represented in film, they become a concrete person representing that character. And absolutely, by default of being represented by an actor, take on certain characteristics. I mean, the series was bad no matter what, changed the whole personality of one of the main characters. So they changed their race was the least problem. I mean, that very much could be. I don't know the series and the whole world well enough to truly speak well to that point. Good example is Kingdom Come Deliverance. If I am not mistaken, there are no black people because the game is accurate to reality. But Twitter had other idea. But there was shit ton of movies with black people in it. They are represented where they suit. I guess I'm not really sure what all you're trying to say with that. I can't say that I ever imagined any fictional character as any color. I don't have that much of an imagination. I just read the words and enjoy the story. I mean, yeah, I think that that's what's cool about reading versus watching a movie, is that you can really make it your own and you can really approach it and bring it into your own imaginational theater, which is different for everybody because everybody has a different amount of ability to visualize things in their head. Geralt was ugly as fuck in the book. They made him super sexy in the game series. Just saying. Yeah, I mean, they made a lot of choices that were different, and this often happens. And I find it interesting that some of the choices that are frequently made in film are completely accepted, like the over-sexualization of characters and the decreasing of their disability representation in film is very common, but we don't tend to get too worked up about that. We just accept that that's frequently how things are portrayed in film. But I think it's safe to say, Danton, that this is an issue that we're just going to have to agree to disagree on and leave it at that. And that's okay. We don't have to agree on everything.